Ronnie. Mr. Ronnie, we're ready for you whenever you are. Yes, sir. Justin's here. The show can begin. J. Carl's here.
And the catfishing expert's here too, so we got a good group.
Hey, Mike.
Okay, we all set?
Yes, sir.
All right, here comes a good friend, Mr. Watts.
Look to the cameras as you walk by here.
K-State Watts. All right. All right, buddy. Good to see you.
How you doing? Good to see you, brother.
Come on in here. Glad to see you. Okay, here we are on Friday, October the 13th. And it doesn't scare us a bit. We got a fierce group here tonight, and some new first-timers. We're glad to have you here. I hope you find that what you pay for this is well worth it, because it's going to be free, as it always is. And we do have a loyal following. Some couldn't come tonight, but tonight I'm looking at 4 new people that I know are new, which I believe you are. Not new to me, but new to the seminar. So we got great instructors. I'll let their work speak for itself. But we're always appreciative that you came, and we hope you'll come back. And if you have any questions, they'll encourage you to ask them. And I hope to see you again. And I really appreciate y'all coming, okay? Thank y'all. Thank you. Billy?
Thank you, sir. All right, this is Ronnie Park, good man right there. Does a good job letting us host these things and get out. So, just a few of you guys tonight here, but a lot of you guys over there. So, hey, it's fall. Fall's one of the best times to fish. Somewhat overlooked. A lot of people hunt. Lakes get less crowded. But fall is the time of year we all get excited in the spring because the fish move shallow, right? And it'll be a little easier to target. Big fish get up in there and they're easier to kind of visualize where they would be in that shallow water. Well, in fall they get up there, but they ain't up there to mess around and do what they do in the spring. They're there to eat, buddy. And when you come across a group of them in the fall, there's no doubt what they're there to do, because you catch them one after another when you hit it right. So, exciting time of year. It's starting to happen. We've been catching some big fish on some fun ways to catch them the last few days. A lot of shad pattern, moving bait type stuff. So let's get right into the techniques. I'm going to talk to you guys about a couple techniques I'm using right now. I'll give you full details on how to use those over the next month or so going forward to catch some really big bass on Lake Fork. First one's going to be the chatterbait. And I'm kind of using a two-pronged approach. I've got a chatterbait and I've got a swim jig. And depending on conditions, it's depending on which one of these I'm throwing. Show you guys online. A little 3/8 ounce white chatterbait with a white Live Magic shad, and a 3/8 ounce swim jig with a white Kitech swim bait for a trailer. On these baits, the way I decide which do I throw is conditions. When it gets really windy, when I think the fish are really active because maybe it's hard south wind and there's a little cloud cover, or if there's a little bit of darkness, a little stain in the water, I go to the chatterbait. When it slicks off and gets calm, and I got really clear water, and it's kind of one of those things you get in there, you're like, man, these fish are hard to catch in this clear water. That's when the more realistic, more subtle approach from a swim jig comes into hand. And I'll literally switch in and out throughout the day. Like, I'll have both tied on. When the wind's blowing, I'm throwing a chatterbait. And when it stops blowing, I'll throw the swim jig. And we'll go back and forth multiple times throughout the day to key in on bites. As far as an area that we're throwing these in, it's grass for me is the big deal right now. As these fish move into creeks, there's going to be more of them move into the creeks that have grass because the bait fish like the grass. So, it's all about bait in the fall. They're going to follow it in there. And those grassy creeks that have grass in the back of them are going to hold more fish. And that's where those fish are going to be able to really position themselves on those schools of bait and ambush them better and all that. So, grass does a lot of things. I don't want to get into a grass seminar because we can talk all night just about grass. So this is the 2 chatterbaits I'm using. This is a 3/8 ounce. This is like Japanese underground chatterbait. It's one they sell right here on the counter. Really like this one. I throw the original Z-Man. That's the one I've thrown forever and ever. Old trusty. Yes, the hooks break. Yes, everything breaks on them. They're terrible baits, but man, do they get bit. So I keep throwing them even though this one's 2 days old and it's like falling apart literally. So I like this bait a lot though. This new one that Ronnie's selling on the counter up here, it's really one of the only chatterbaits I've ever thrown that can hang stride for stride as far as bites go with the old Z-Man. I rigged up these 2 baits right here. This is how most people rig them, with the 3.5 inch Live Magic shad. That's the one that most people use. I think most people are messing up. I think they're making a mistake. Show this to the camera. This is the 3.5 inch Live Magic Shad on the Chatterbait right there. What I do is I take the 4.5 inch, and if you look at that, there's almost no difference in length, right? See how the length is almost the exact same? So this is the 4.5 inch, 3.5 inch. The reason that is, what I do is I take the nose of that bait, and I got it right here in the package, and I'll pass this around here in just a second, but if you'll look at that nose, there's a little notch on that nose. I cut that bait off right at that notch to make it a little bit shorter. If you guys can see on the camera, there's a little notch right there. We tear that off, cut it off right there. Here you go, sir. Pass that around, you see that notch? And what that does is it creates the right profile. The 3.5 inch is the right length profile. This adds a little more bulk to it, makes it look a little bit more fatter. But really what it does is the action on that 4.5 inch versus this is way better. This bait will move and dance, and when you jerk it out of that grass, that tail will kick over to the side real wide, whereas this is much more of a tight and subtle action. So I get a lot more reactions out of that bigger bait, but to make it be the right size proportionate to the chatterbait, I just trim that nose down a little bit. Does that make sense? Okay. On this old swim jig right here, this is a 6-cent swim jig that I'm using with that Kitech swim bait. One of the reasons I really like this 6-cent swim jig over others is it has a screw lock. You actually have to twist that bait on. I mean, yeah, is it a pain to put that bait on there? Uh-huh. Yup, it is. But we had to change the trailer out today because a smaller fish came up and bit the tail off. But other than that, you guys know I've been fishing every day. Every day this week we've been fishing. Customers throwing this bait, catching fish on it every day. That bait that was on there before had been on there for a week. Once you screw them into that screw lock, man, that swim bait's there. He's good. You know, if you're fishing on the weekends, that thing can last a month or more sometimes. So, really like that swim jig because, yeah, it's more time consuming to get that trailer on there, but then once it's on there, I save so much time because I'm never tearing up trailers and changing them out. It's very rare that you have to change the trailer. Like I said, big thing is grass. What you want? Yes, sir.
Can you ask questions?
Yes, sir. Absolutely, of course.
I was comparing the paddle tail to just the regular swim tail on his baits. Is your time that one's better than the other, or?
Okay, so for me on the Live Magic Shad on the Chatterbait, it coincides. It works better with that vibration, that horizontal tail and those swim slots on that Live Magic Shad. As that Chatterbait vibrates, those swim slots and the horizontal tail, that bait just does this and has these subtle little things like where the paddle tail is just doing this, and it's almost countering the action of the Chatterbait, and they kind of mess each other up sometimes. They don't really go as smooth. It doesn't work together as well as that. So on the Chatterbait, I use Live Magic Shad. That's the only trailer I use on a Chatterbait. On a swim jig, however, the head's not moving. That tail actually is wagging so much on that Kitech that it makes the head just tight wiggle. So that's why I use the big, wide, wobbling swim baits on the swim jig. Okay? Yeah, I never use a Live Magic Shad on a swim jig, and I never use a swim bait on a Chatterbait. So that's just the ones I use for that technique. Yes, sir.
Just a little bit on setup. When you're talking about biting off, you're talking about right at the end of that.
Where that little notch is in the head. There's just a little notch in the head. I'll take it right there at that crease.
Are you trimming your skirt at all, or?
Nope, don't trim the skirt. Let the skirt hang. That's the full skirt right there. Here, you can look at that. But it comes down. But that thing's shaking so much that it doesn't interfere with the action on that tail. It's just vibrating like crazy. So, yep. The way we're fishing these in that grass is, make your long cast. If you got an edge, if you got a mat, get it up right next to the edge or even on that mat and bring it off. And then immediately when it comes, if you get it on top of the mat, as soon as it comes off, rip it about 3 or 4 feet, burn it, and then start swimming medium. Now, when you start swimming medium, you'll feel it get down into that grass and it'll bog up. If you can hit it early, when I say hit it early, when you're reeling that bait in, the second that you start to feel the weight of that grass, really be paying attention. As soon as you start to feel that grass weight load up on there, pop it. It'll shoot right out of there. It'll be coming along, it'll skip through that grass, and that's when you get big bites, when it shoots out of that grass. Now, if you're reeling and you're too late and you wait till it bogs down, it's going to bring, that grass is going to fold, and you're going to bring that grass with it, and then you got to really go to doing all this to get it off there, and it wears you out. So really pay attention. If you can hit it early when you feel that grass load up, you can work that bait through thick grass that it would amaze you how good you come through there. And that's how I'm doing both the swim jig and the chatterbait. That's how I'm working it through there. Now let's talk about this. This is exciting. When they bite this, it's not, if you don't want to spend money, don't ever throw this bait. Because the first time that you catch one on it, you're about to spend a lot of money. Because they are a little bit expensive. These are Smash Tech convicts. This is a weedless convict. That's my favorite weedless big bait. Bar none. Not a close second for me. This bait for a 2-pack costs $17, I think? Yeah, $17 for a 2-pack of the Smash Tech convicts. So it costs money. But every bite you get, when you set the hook, I mean, it's big fish when you start throwing this thing. And you know, 3 and 4 pounders will eat it. I have caught some 3 and 4 pounders the last couple of days on it, and they've eaten the whole bait in their mouth. So 3 and 4 pounder can't eat it, but today we caught one that she was pushing 10, real close to 10 on this bait just a few hours ago. So phenomenal bait. As far as the way you rig this, you gotta have a big rod. My rod for this is a 711 extra heavy limit 5 series, $150 rod. It's about the best value you can get on a rod that's that big, that can literally take this bait. This weighs 1.75 ounces with just the plastic. And I can take this thing and sling it around like a spinnerbait on that rod. It's a light rod, tough rod that'll handle that job. So you gotta make sure you have the right gear for that. All the grass that I'm fishing around, I'm throwing this on 50-pound braid, and the hook is a 10-aught Owner Beast weightless hook. I'm throwing it weightless so it'll stay on top of that grass, and you just slow creeping it across the top of that grass. And one key thing about this, you'll feel them bump it. Those fish, they'll hit this thing a bunch. Hit it, hit it, hit it. As they hit it, just keep it coming. Because there's one thing that I'll guarantee you, there will never be a fish that eats this bait that you wonder if he's got it. When he eats it, there won't be a question, and you better hold on to your rod because they literally can jerk it out of your hands. They hit it so hard. I had one the other day that hit it so hard, and as he hammered it that hard, and I tried to set the hook, he dang near sprained my wrist. I mean, it's a violent bite. It's bone jarring the way they hit that thing. So you'll feel that distinct. I mean, you'll feel some bumps, and you'll think, oh, I got a bite. I got to just keep that swim bait coming. If you jerk on it, that fish is gone. If not, they will stay behind it. They follow these baits and follow them and follow them. So as they're following, they're bumping it with their mouth closed, bumping it with their mouth closed. Eventually, they're going to come up and hit it going that way. And when they do, that's that bone-jarring strike. And you're just holding on for dear life, really. And as far as that, you know, if you've got that gear, that big rod, 711 extra heavy rod, 50-pound braid, 10-aught hook, hey, once you get that hook in them, get their head up, get control as fast as you can, and just, you know, burn them to the boat. You know, get control and don't let them have it back, because they'll get you. So, big baits are always exciting. One more little tip I can give you on this, as you're fishing it through heavy vegetation, is to point the rod. When you throw the bait out there, as you're reeling it in, point the rod directly at the bait. If you have that rod at an angle with the line, where the line's at a 90-degree angle for whatever I'm not a math guy, so whatever the angle is, that grass will tend, for whatever reason, that grass tends to load up. What it is that rod's creating a little bit of shock absorption. So as that hits that grass, that it'll pause and it'll let that grass load up on that bait a little more. Whereas if you're pointing straight at it and you got 50-pound braid with zero stretch, and you're slowly reeling that thing through there, well, there's no shock absorption. So as it hits that grass, that braided line will just slice through whatever grass there is, because there's no give, and it'll just come right on through it. It'll ease right through there.
What brand of plastic did you say that was?
That'd be a Smash Tech Convict will be the name of this bait right
Smash
here.
Tech convict. Now, how does the fishing super glue work on that plastic? Does it work all right?
Yeah. So Mendit is the brand that I use. Mendit, and it's a soft plastic glue that you can buy at a lot of tackle stores around here. What it actually is, Mendit is not actually an adhesive, it's PVC glue. It's actually a chemical compound that melts plastic. So when you have a tear, when this gets torn out, if you caught a fish or two, you ripped it out of grass and you got a tear, you take this bait off, you separate it, you just pull on it, separate it, and you rub that Mendit on the inside of it, and you just squeeze it together for about 15 seconds. You lay it on the deck of your boat right there. 5 minutes later, you have a brand new swim bait that the plastic has literally melted back together. So it works like a gem. It saves you a ton of money. I've got 3 on the deck of that boat out there that got minuted a little bit ago. It's laying there right now. So it's don't go steal my convicts. I'm watching y'all. Mike. Yeah. So that's basically it. I mean, it's a pretty simple bait. You know, some little tricks like pointing at it and you know, keeping it coming when they bump it, but pretty simple. The bites that you get are incredible. There's plenty of guys around this lake that have had some amazing days. I think the biggest 5 bag that I've heard of on this particular bait was Andrew's. It's like 44 or 45 pounds with an 11 pounder for the big out of the biggest 5. So, and you can catch some hammers on this thing. So, get after it. Any questions?
What height on grass are you looking for?
Depth.
Throwing off the bottom. Yeah.
You know, in the fall, as the temperatures get in the 60s, they can get in the dirt. I mean, they can get skinny water. Right now, for me, my grass that I'm fishing is growing in anywhere from 4 to 6 foot of water. And I'm looking for the outside channel bends that have the deeper water, the 7, 8, 9, 10 foot of water on the channel bends. And then outside of that, it's 4 to 6 foot. I'm fishing those points and those outside bends, those elevation changes that that creek creates. That's where I'm really focusing most of my attention on. That seems to be where the schools are kind of stopping and ganging up at on their way in and out of these creeks right now.
Any idea? Does it matter at all how much water you got on top of your grass?
No, I mean, some of this stuff is it's growing to the top. You'll see stalks growing to the top. It's even matted in some areas, and I'm just walking it down the edge of that mat or working it through those stalks. And like I said, if you point right at it, it'll just work right through there. I can see the bait most of the time when I'm retrieving it because that's how thick the grass is.
Okay.
Yep. Anybody else? All in on done? All right. Well, hey, is there any online questions on this topic there, Kev?
Oh, you get online.
You said 10 odd beast hook.
10 odd owner beast weightless.
Yeah, you had 2 questions.
Go ahead.
Hang on, you might have more than that. Fishing a big grass flat the other week with tons of grass on top and only canals of fish. I can only catch fish on top water. What else would be good to throw when they're keying in on 2-inch shad? Weakness.
2-inch shad. Well, if they're eating shad that small, you can go a couple different ways. You can go to the really small, like the 3.8 Kitex. You can get the small swim baits. If you can work a 1/4 ounce trap through the grass, that's a great way to go about that situation. That imitates a small shad probably better than anything else. But the grass is too thick. Go down to the 3-inch swim baits. Get a 3/0 weedless hook to throw that on there. And the other thing that you can do is go really finesse. And I know there's somebody in this crowd that's going to like this answer. But go ahead and wacky those fish. If they're focusing on small bait, you can use finesse techniques, and a lot of times, even it can be big fish focusing on small bait, but a finesse technique will cause them to bite when they're focusing on small bait a lot of times. So a wacky worm is always a good option in a grass flat when you can't get bit on bigger baits. Any more?
Yep.
Go ahead.
Said, heard someone mention that most better grass can be found in a drain. What is a drain? Does fork have drains? Sounds a big difference than a ditch.
Yeah. So no, a drain and a ditch can be the same thing. And a drain, every lake has a drain. Every river has a drain. All a drain is, when you hear a drain or a ditch, what that is basically a secondary channel to the creek channel. So in any given creek arm on any given lake, you're going to have the main creek channel that runs up there and winds around. Well, out of all those creek channel bends, you'll have those high spots around the bends. And then if you look at the outside bend, there's typically a low spot that feeds into that. It's where a secondary little water drainage feeds into that creek. It's not big enough for people to call it a creek. It doesn't typically have a big steep ledge on it. It's typically a slow sloping ledge, and it's not as drastic, but that's a drain. It's just a lower a place where it gets a little bit deeper, a little bit more of a depression, and it runs in and meets that creek. That's a drain.
Does it have grass in it? Better grass?
Better grass? No. I mean, every grass can be growing in the bottom of a creek channel depending on the depth. Grass is always going to grow to a certain depth in a given area. You know, like on Fork right now, back in the summer we had some grass growing out to 8, 9 foot. Right now, the deepest grass that I've seen here lately, there's a few spots that have some weird stuff going on where they've got some super deep grass. But for the most part, in the backs of creeks, your deepest grass you're going to find is going to be about 5 to 6 foot is where the grass will stop growing. So if that drain is deeper than 6 foot in the bottom, it's not going to have grass. But if that drain bottoms out at 4 feet, it's going to have grass. Any more?
Is the warming trend going to do anything Because of how cool it got this week, will it change anything?
Nope, because it's not gonna change, it's not long enough to change the water temp that drastically. We've got another front coming behind it. It can maybe reposition the fish a little bit throughout their migration routes, but it's not gonna totally back them out by any means. It's not even close to being that kind of a warming trend. In all honesty, that warming trend, when that south wind blows and that sun shines, they kind of bite better when they're chasing bait. So the warming trend can kind of be a good thing. You can catch them a little better on the warming trend sometimes than you can maybe the day directly after the cold front. So no, it's not going to affect them at all. We got another front coming here in just a couple days, and the fall bite's happening. And it's just this bite that we're talking about right now. It's coming. It's going to keep coming. It's happening, and there's more coming to it.
What depth of water did the 10-3 come out of?
3 foot of water. I know that's not a popular answer.
I don't know if they can hear you asking me. I don't know if they can hear me asking you the questions.
Oh, I should be repeating the questions.
Yeah.
Hey, these are all answers to the questions that y'all have typed over
On
here.
YouTube. Those are all on
YouTube questions. I've been answering all those questions, so those are for y'all. Thank y'all. You're gonna have to go back and play the matching game on those answers. Maybe watch the playback. I don't know. We'll figure it out. It's all good. We're having a good time tonight. Is that it, Kev? We got more?
No, that's it.
That's it. Okay. Good deal. Did y'all have any more you thought of and all that? Yes, sir.
One more on that, just talking about grass with Big Guy. Are you casting way back into the grass mat, or are you just staying on the edge of it?
As far as on top of a mat, I don't go way. I try to throw it right up on the edge and then bring it off.
Mat, but the grass field.
The grass flat? Oh yes, I'll get on the grass flat where there's scattered stalks coming to the top, and I'll throw that sucker half a mile and just work it through all that grass. That is one thing that I didn't say that is important with these long casts, guys. Long casts. They follow them for a long time before they commit to them quite often. So you want to make super long casts and give that fish a chance to get in behind it, look at it, and then eat it before you get back to the boat. So, oh, and when you get back to the boat, every time before you bring that bait in, you should pause. Because as you're reeling that bait in, if he's behind it, which happens a lot, if he's behind it, and all of a sudden that bait just comes up out of the water, that fish is down there going, what in the world just, dang UFOs out here abducting bait fish. So if you will reel it and right before you get to the boat, when you can see that bait right out there in front of you, just pause. You'd be surprised how many of them will come up there and take a swipe at it. So, yep. All
What's
right.
your ratio?
6'3". 6'3" for me on the swim baits. All right. Online questions, keep bringing them. We can answer them at the end. You guys are good on questions, so I'm going to get Mr. Mike McFarland. I'm at the end of my time, so Mike, get on up here and fill us in on what you got, buddy. Thank you, sir. Doing good, brother.
So you got the big fish bite on fork, and now I'm going to give you the underbite, the smaller fish bite, because we got a tournament. You got a lot of tournament goers that love to fish this lake. I know there's high school guys. There's a lot of high school kids. You should pay attention to this, because it's pretty critical. Lake Fork has that slot limit, 16 to 24. It's no good at a tournament. It's fun to catch. It's great for guide lake, but I'm going to give you some of my favorite tips for fork, and it starts with drop shotting. I know everybody knows how to drop shot. If you don't by now, where have you been? All right, drop shotting is in every single tournament. Drop shotting is the way to finish a limit. On fork, it's probably the go-to to catch your unders, okay? But it doesn't necessarily catch your bigger unders. So what I'm going to talk to you first is some of the importance, the most important thing in drop shotting and why. I'm starting out with a very, very light. The typical drop shot rig is a real finesse rig. I like the Bushido made with the real time, and if I'm correct, this should be an 815 rod. Okay. Typically, I'm going to run 8-pound test or lighter on my regular drop shot. If I was at Lake Mead, if I was at any clear water fishery, I'm going to use 8-pound or less. For many, many years, I always thought, as many of us did, that we were using this lighter line. We thought that the fish were seeing the bait. Okay, so a typical drop shot for me on a normal lake, not a big fish factory like Lake Fork, is 8-pound test, a very light drop shot rod made specifically for drop shotting. So this is an 815 drop shot rod.
What does 815 mean?
8 pound, 8 to 15 pound. So this
Line,
is
right?
no the rod rating. So this rod is 7 foot, 815. That means it's rated for 8-pound to 15-pound fishing line. Okay, I'm going to put 8 pound on it. If you have the drop shot version of this particular real-time rod, the drop shot 815 has a very soft tip, super duper soft tip. And that's what you want for most drop shot rods. Okay? Some of you will do it with spinning rods. I like to do it with the baitcaster. Again, this is for the small 1 and 2 pound fish. Would I go fish other lakes with this? Absolutely. But if I get into the lakes where I've got bigger fish, where I may end up having a shot at an over along the way, which believe me, they can bite a drop shot rig. But I wanted to start with the small finesse drop shot rig that everybody's familiar with. And the reason is this is what I will not use it on pork. Okay? But I wanted to talk about a couple things that are important. A regular drop shot rod, I'm going to rig it up with 8 pound test or lighter. I used to go to 7. I'm going to use a number 2 mosquito hook. For some reason this isn't laying quite right for me today. I'm going to use a number 2 and a nose hook. Okay? The reason that that light line is so critical, and I'm going to elaborate as I step up here, is that it actually allows the buoyancy of the worm. When you take the hook and you're tying the hook straight on the line, okay, the heavier the line, the bigger the knot, the more stiffness of the hook and the stiffness of the worm takes away from the liveness of the worm. So Aaron Martins, for example, he uses 3 pound test because he believes that that worm is much more alive, and it is on its own, without having to shake it, without having to move it. So the purpose of the light line is not because the fish see it. They definitely don't see it in the dirty water here, and they definitely don't see it when you're down below 20, 25 feet because there's very little UV light for them to see it anyways. So the factor is that light line is very important when you're drop shotting. 8 pound or less. Okay? So as I said, this to me, if I went out on Lake Fork, I'm asking for a heartbreak, even with our 2 pounders. Alright? Lake Barkley or I can name a lot of lakes on the west coast that this would be very appropriate for, where 10 or 12 pounds is an average good bag. Okay? When I get to Fork, oh, by the way, before I go, let's talk about, one of the most important things too that people talk about is leaders. How much should I have for a leader? Rule of thumb for me is if I'm fishing brush piles, that's the only time that I want a substantial amount of leader. Depending on how big the brush piles are, I may play with the difference in my leader. In here I have about 1.5 feet for the weight. Okay? My first really, really important lesson as I step up here to what I call Bubba shotting. I left this leader long so that I could actually make a demonstrative point that I prefer that my length of leader I prefer it, as many pros will, to be no longer than the tail of the worm that I'm choosing to use. Okay? Most of the time, a worm is a bottom type bait. It's something that the fish will take off the bottom. And I normally want that drop shot worm to just touch the drop shot weight. 99% of the time, that is my rig. 99% of the time, I want the worm tail to just touch the weight. Okay? That's how I rig my drop shots. Now, when I go to the Bubba shot, what I've done is I have an 815 rod. It's a real-time rod. It's an 815, but it's actually the next MB up, so it doesn't quite have as soft of a tip. You'll see it's still soft, but it's not as soft as the other. Okay? It allows me to put 12 pound test on here, and then I tie only 2 feet of 8 pound leader. Okay? So now I have a much better backing when I've got a fish on. The line that I'm really on is 12 pound test. So if I'm hooking into these stronger fish, I actually am stronger. Until that line goes into the rod, it's really not under any extra stress. So that leader is more adequate than you need. I don't need 6 feet of it, and I don't want 6 feet of it. Okay? The reason I don't want that extra leader is the longer the leader, the more it goes into the rod, the more you feel the knots going through. I know some of you use braid. I'm going to teach you this because you can get away from the braid. All right? The braid to fluorocarbon is a very difficult knot. The Albright is about the only one, or the Slim Beauty, that will actually work and not fail. And it takes time to tie those. It's a nightmare. I've tried this, I've tried the braid, I've finally come back to 12-pound fluorocarbon, and I tie only about 2 feet a leader, okay? And the reason is I don't bother casting it anymore. I don't worry about that knot that's in there because it's only a foot, and I pitch my drop shot. Okay? Now I don't have to worry about the knot going through. I have fluorocarbon to fluorocarbon, so I don't have a failing knot ever. Alright? It's 12-pound test on the rod, which I call Bubba Shot and Fork. I got a little bit more backbone, a little bit more of a rod, 6:3 gear ratio. And that's how I drop shot on fork. Okay? So, if any of you kids are watching this, some of the tips are that you need to be drop shotting with that light line. You only need about 2 feet a leader. If you want to take a look how I did that. I just tie a uni-to-uni knot. It's a simple knot that way. I'm not concerned about all those other impressive, very difficult, time-consuming knots. And I don't have the failure that those knots tend to have. Okay? So the next thing I'll add to you before, this is really cool, and this seminar really is absolutely for you guys here. And thank you for being here in the class. But I understand that there's a bunch of tournaments this weekend, so I really wanted to give you a couple angles. The really neat thing about this is that I can also, this rod's strong enough, I can also pitch and flip the docks. Which again is why I want that short leader. If I have a short leader on my drop shot, it makes it really easy to pitch and flip the docks. Alright, and I'm about ready. My seminar is not going to be too long tonight. I'm about ready. Anybody have any questions so far? About ready to give you the real meat though. Alright, in most of these tournaments, you need to catch that 15 and 7/8, 2.85 pound fish. And believe me, this is my favorite part of this rod with the 12-pound test on it. I can tie my leader and use it as a drop shot. Once I've got 5 fish, if I'm in a tournament, I got 5 small 2-pounders, or say I got 5 smaller fish, I'm going to take that same rod, I'm going to cut that leader line off, and I'm going to get myself how many of you guys think jigs catch bigger fish? That's a no-brainer. If you're a bass fisherman, you know that jigs catch bigger fish. Okay, well, we don't want too big a fish, so we're going to go to a finesse jig. Okay, we're going to keep it small, we're going to keep it compact. And here's what I guarantee you out of this. Okay, this is the jig here. This is Santone's finesse jig, 7/16. It's basically next to a 1/2 ounce, just under a 1/2 ounce. I trim it, and I keep the very small claws. So this is not a big jig anymore, this is a finesse jig. Okay, I can use it on the same rod, and I assure you, if I was to go out, drop shot, once I have 5 good ones in there, I'm going to switch to this jig in those same particular areas where I'm fishing, and I won't get bit as much, but I'll get that little bit more mature fish, and I'll get that 15, 7/8, and occasionally the 16 1/4 ones that I have to let go. But I promise you with McFarland integrity, that by switching to the finesse jig, small baits as your creature trailers, okay, you will catch that money fish on Lake Fork. And it's all done with one rod. Okay, I got a drop shot rod and a finesse jig rod, all combined in one. It's an 8/15 real-time rod. But take a look at this jig. Go ahead, I won't hook it. Just gonna flip it right in your lap. You can see how it's nice and compact. It's real simple. There's only 2 colors that I throw in that jig. One's a crawfish color. It can be JC craw, or it can be natural craw. I normally just put a green pumpkin trailer on it. That's some odd color. It usually is just basic. I just keep it simple green pumpkin. And your brim colors. Again, this is river bream, and I small trailers in brim colors. And what I've achieved is any bass fisherman that has a lot of experience knows that yes, bigger fish eat jigs and crawfish, bigger bass eat brim, right? Small fish chase the shad, big fish eat shad too, but for a roundabout figure, the bigger fish are caught on crawfish style baits and bluegills type baits, shrimp type baits. So those are the two that I stick with because my purpose is to simply catch that better 3 pound under. That's what I want. I want that 12 pound sack for 5 fish, and this jig will do it for you. So if you're listening, anybody that fishes Fork already, if you've got some drop shot holes, you got a spot out there where you can go catch 8 pounds in your drop shot, catch your 8 pounds. Once you got it in there, switch to one of these jigs in those same water. You will not get bit as much, but I promise you, you'll catch the little larger fish that's grown a little older. It's just a little bit, it's not in that adolescent mode, and it's willing and ready for a little more protein. Okay? So, any questions? That's one of my favorites. Kevin Sharp could verify that. I absolutely love to go throw this on the docks, and I grind those docks. But every fish that I catch is usually a little bit different. You can tell if you go out and catch 10 or 15 of the drop shot fish and then go catch one of those. It's more of a residential fish, I want to say, but it's just that fish that's a little bit more mature. And fortunately, it lays right in that money fish, especially for like Berkeley. It's an hourly fish. This jig gets it done. Okay? It's made by Santone, Finesse jig. Rare do I ever use the lighter than that. I always leave a half-ounce jig. I always have, always will. Even if I'm in a foot of water, I'm going to throw a half-ounce jig. If I'm in 30 feet of water, I still throw a half-ounce jig. Okay, any questions?
Could you use that in grass too?
Absolutely. Now, in the grass, I would prefer, and I haven't talked to her, maybe someday we could get her to make a Finesse grass jig, but they already have enough. The grass jig itself, you can just go lighter. You know, use a 1/4 ounce grass jig. If this has got a round head on it, so it's not going to pull through the grass as well. If you wanted to, same colors in the grass, it's excellent, but just go down to like a 1/4 ounce.
That 5/16 swim jig.
Right. That's usually what I like to do is I switch, and instead of going to my grass jigs, these days I'm actually throwing the swim jigs, and I fish them like a jig. I'll throw them by a stump. It's jig. I mean, just because the head's a little different, it allows me to actually pitch it by the stump. While it's by the stump, fish it just like a jig. When I get to the edge, I pop it and slow roll it back the rest of the way. So I have I'm fishing the whole way. I have the best of 2 worlds in one. I've got a jig by the bottom of the stump. Once it's past the stump, now I've got it turned into a swim jig. And believe me, a lot of times they crush that. They decide that they didn't want it when it was right next to them by the log, but as it decided to take off, they went, I'm going to go get it. And I get some of those vicious strikes, just like Billy's talking about at that very end. So this one I wouldn't swim as much. It's a round head. It's going to collect junk. So when you're around too much grass, you will collect a little bit of it. But excellent for the brush piles, excellent for the docks, the main lake points. And my biggest reason to share it is this is one of my most favorite things that I learned 4 years ago by accident here in Fork and in the surrounding area. This jig will catch that better quality fish. So, any other questions? Well, thank you. I appreciate you guys being here, and thank you for your time. And good luck fishing, all you kids in the high school tournament. Get you some Santone swim jigs and some Santone Finesse jigs.
Y'all in?
We're all done.
All right. Jay Crawl, come on.
Oh, really? See those? Again.
What happened, YouTube?
That phone's not going to make it all another week, buddy.
Yeah, I got 2 questions for you.
What's up, buddy?
For me?
Are you up and running?
Oh my goodness gracious. This phone is jumping off this counter. Okay, go ahead.
Is there more grass in the northern creeks or southern creeks?
Northern.
Yeah, northern.
When do you stop throwing your big swim baits?
Never. No, for the fall deal, kind of like the first week of December is when it usually fades, right after Thanksgiving. All right. Jay Crawl, Justin Crawford, get up here and talk to the people, tell them something good.
Hey, real quick, guys, thank you everybody for watching. Seriously, almost never though, because even then there's some other trend bites that we can throw, those warm training concrete seawalls and stuff like that. Get you some of them big swim baits. This guy's on them already. It's pretty cool.
Mike,
Yes.
what's a good fall rate on them jigs?
If I'm going to fish that in deeper water and stuff, I will tend to, like maybe I'm fishing the deep edges of docks, deeper docks. I will play with some fall rates, and I'll go down to like the 3/16 that she makes. There are some different weights and some different fall patterns that you may try. just deeper docks, but like, again, I stick with the 7/16. It's just basically a 1/2 ounce finesse jig, and it works really well everywhere I fish. Hey, there was a question way back that Billy answered, and when I was a kid, there was talking about matted grass, and there were small shad, and you were eating topwaters. When they quit eating the topwaters, rig yourself up a small 4-inch lizard, weightless, just Texas rig weedless, weightless, and reel it real slow across the top of the grass, and they'll come out of that grass and eat it. So, thanks
Carl,
again.
come here. Justin,
Any other questions? Any other questions, Kevin? Okay.
For you guys that don't know, this is Justin Crawford, Young Man Guides on Lake Fork here. One of the best people you'll ever meet. He's one of my favorite guys on the whole planet, and he catches gigantor bass every once in a while.
Best beard out of all of it.
And he's got the strongest beard game on the lake. Ain't no doubt about that.
That's right. Thank you guys for coming out and supporting us. We really appreciate it. I'm just going to talk a little bit about how I've been catching my fish. I'm not as detailed or in depth as these guys, but I can answer any question you have the best I can. Last few days for me, I've been targeting river channels and small feeder creeks leading back into the back of small pockets and coves. That, like, you know, if you have a main lake cove that comes off the lake and you get in the back of that cove, you may have, depending on how long the cove is or what cove it is, you know, 3 to 7 smaller coves branching off of it. And we're focusing on those feeder creeks and those river channels that are feeding up into those smaller creeks from the main lake creeks, or from the main lake coves. And I'm focusing on about 8 to 10 foot of water right now. And whenever I'm trying to hunt these down on my days off, I'm looking to find feeder creeks in these coves that are holding either grass or good amount of timber. And the more brush and laydowns there are on the banks has been a big key for me. I know Billy's a real big grass guy, and grass has been working for me, but willow trees, brush, and laydowns off the bank and the backs of these creeks have been a really, really big ticket for me. But my big fish have been coming off. They're not up in that grass or up in that shallow water just yet. It's still kind of cool. Or still pretty hot. It needs to be cool off a little bit. So they're still out there in that deeper water on those logs. And I'm running these A-rigs by them and slow playing it. As slow as you can without getting hung up or hitting the bottom. And those big bass are just hanging out in, you know, 8 to 10 foot of water, and they'll be anywhere from a foot to 3 foot off the bottom right now on the sides of those logs. And they're just using those logs as stop signs until this water cools off. And there's so much bait and shad each night, it's making its way in the back of that creek that they can sit there all day. And whenever, you know, one comes past it, just like a bait ball, it'll go up, eat, and then go back down and it's covered. And until that water breaks, you know, that 75 to 76 degree range, those big bass are just holding up. They're not ready to go back in the backs just yet. For my numbers and my smaller fish, that brush and the laydowns I was talking about, it's pretty hard to fish those with this right here, you know, without getting hung up. And you will get hung up a lot with this around those logs like I'm talking about, but it does pay off, especially for the size. Bigger fish have come off this. I'm throwing it on a 7'11" rod, extra, extra heavy. And with my customers, I'll put 25-pound to 30-pound mono. And that's only because when you're not used to this bait and don't know how to throw it, you get excited, especially after catching a couple of fish. And you want to start slinging it. Well, this bait and how much weight it is, you don't have to do that. It's just a nice, you know, just kind of toss it out there and it'll sling. So whenever you get excited and do that, throwing it as hard as you can, it wads up and you bird nest bad. And with that mono, it has stretch. So in the air, I'll see it, and it'll stretch back and come back like a slingshot for me so I don't lose these baits. But if you get the hang of it and, you know, you get good with them to where you're not doing that, then I definitely recommend going down to the fluorocarbon and I run 20, 25-pound fluorocarbon on these right here. And other lakes, like Falcon, that guy down there as well, and on Monticello, I'll run it with braid. But here on Fork, it's not the sight of the line that gets them, but it's the noise coming from this first guide right here. The sound that that braid makes coming through there, you'd be surprised how loud it is and how far it travels going through there. And these fish here on Fork are, you know, so pressured and so keyed in, they don't want it. Now my shallow water with those, when you get in the backs of these creeks, and the creeks that I'm talking about where we're throwing that A-rig in the 8 to 10 foot range, off to the sides of these creeks and in the back of them, you're looking for 2 to 4 foot of water, maybe 5 foot of water, and those laydowns, those willow trees, and those brush piles are holding quite a bit of fish right now. And this is what I'm throwing. This is one of my favorite crankbaits on the market. and it's a 6 cents movement 80 crankbait. And the action of this crankbait, I haven't seen one yet that matches it. It wobbles so, I mean, it wobbles, I mean, almost touching the line. It's going so rapid side to side, and it deflects off wood very, very well. It'll stop and actually bounce its way back. It's kind of a buoyant bait, so when it hits that wood, it'll kind of stop. You'll see it come back, and it goes right around. And that's usually when I get my bites.
What kind is it?
6 cents movement 80. And this sucker, it doesn't go very deep at all, which is also perfect when I get in these coves. They may have some grass or stuff around it. You know, I'm able to kind of work it like a rattle trap because it doesn't go very deep. You're able to kind of rip that grass off of it. This is a great, great bait. Back in the creeks that have quite a bit of grass in them, where it's clear water, I'm definitely using a shad pattern, a shad color. And if I'm getting to the backs of creeks where it's just mainly wood, not much grass, and the water's a little bit dirtier or a cloudier day, I'm going to that chartreuse and blackback color. But the shad pattern has been best for me here lately on the lake because they're definitely starting to feed up. And I'd say here in about another 2 weeks, it's going to be incredible fishing out here. And on the Alabama rig, I'm using the 3.5-inch boot tail live magic shad swim bait. And the action of this tail is incredible, especially whenever I'm talking about slow rolling that A-rig next to those logs. I mean, you can barely even move your reel handle, and these little boots are still just barely kicking. And the watermelon pearl has been best for me. And on my back middle bait, I either use a bigger bait or I'll use a different color. And then I'll also, most of the time, if it's dirtier water, I'll dip that tail in that chartreuse dipping globe and just give it some more flash coming through. Because 8-9 times out of 10, they always hit that back bait. And on the crankbait, I'm using 7'5", medium heavy, fast action tip, and I'm using 15 to 20 pound line. If you know you're going to be around a whole lot of wood and it's bigger wood, then I go up to 20. You know, definitely, because the action of this bait is so incredible as it is that you can go up to 50 pound fluoro, and it's still not going to take away much action from this bait. It's incredible. And this bait works year round. I know Billy catches fish in the wintertime with this bait up in shallow grass. When I'm in these areas that I'm talking about, and I see that they're telling on themselves, and I'm topwater activity, and they're chasing shad, I always have a smaller spook style bait on my deck ready to go for my customers, where you can just pick it up and cast. And it's been, I say as the fall goes on, it'll be more to where every time you see those schools popping up and you throw over there, you're going to catch 1 or 2 right off the bat. Here lately, it's been hit or miss. I'd say every time they're telling themselves for, 15 to 30 seconds you throw over there, and it's 50-50. They may hit, they may not. I don't have a feather style trailer hook on this one, but that's been the ticket for me. In the mornings, I'm working it fast, and that's when they're biting it. But as soon as that sun's come up, especially like today with the warmer trend, the pausing was working the best for us. And I think when that pauses and that hangs down, this mimics, it just looks like a little minnow or a little shad right there on the top of the water, and that's what they're eating, is that. Because there's a lot of the shad in the backs of these creeks right now. There's a few gizzard shad in the areas like Billy's fishing with that deeper grass, but for the most parts in the backs of these creeks I'm talking about, you're talking 1-inch to 3-inch shad. Very, very small shad right now moving back there. And each night that goes by, we're seeing more. I'm seeing more. I live right on the water. I'm seeing more and more birds every morning. I wake up in the backs of these creeks. I'm hearing more topwater activity at night when I'm getting my stuff ready on the. So it's time. And the water temperature does have a lot to do with it, but I feel like it's the time of day. Just like deer and other animals, when the nights get shorter, they know that it's time to do their thing and go back to the backs of these creeks and feed up before winter hits. Their instinct. Last thing also on the A-rig, I throw white. A lot of people do not throw white blades, so they usually throw silver or gold blades. For me on Fort, when it's real bluebird days, I will throw, especially with no wind as well, I'll throw all white or the white and chartreuse. And on those real cloudy days or a rainy day where it's real windy, then I'll use the silver blades. And this one is a very good A-rig to use right now as well. It's more of a finesse especially to get the hang of an A-rig. It's not going to wear you out as much, and it's made by Yum, and it's just a lot smaller profile, especially with what shad they're chasing now. That's a really good bait to throw as well, and it won't wear you out near as much as the bigger one will.
When you're using braided line on the A-rig, what pound test do you use?
50, 60. Yes, sir.
And you was talking about those schooling fish a while ago, somebody's asking, would you use a jerk bait or a spy bait on those schooling fish?
Yeah, spy bait would work absolutely well. The jerk bait would work okay if you're in an area where it's mainly wood and those laydowns, but there's a lot of grass in the area, you know, the jerk bait's going to get hung up in the grass. But yeah, the spy bait would definitely be an okay bait. I would definitely recommend not just continuing to reel the spy bait in like you would a buzz bait. I'd put some pauses in there with it, you know.
What's the spy bait?
It's just a topwater long stick bait, and it's got the 2 propellers on either side of it. It's blown up after
It's
that
a
last
spinning-
wind and the Bassmaster or whatever it
Spinning
was.
jerkbait with props on both ends.
Are there any questions, guys, at all?
How deep does that crankbait run?
Depending on the test, your pound test you have, what, 3-4 foot, maybe if that. If you have
Probably
light
not
line,
4. I mean, 3 is about as deep as you can get it. 2
Yeah.
really is more realistic.
right? Especially with the heavier line, like I was talking about using, you know, 1.5 to 2 foot. But you can get it down to, you know, 3.5 foot if you use really light line, 10-12 pound test. But I don't recommend doing that.
Lighter line will actually let it go deep.
That's right. But I don't recommend doing that. It's such a powerful crankbait.
No, you'll
Fish
be
in such
heartbroken.
heavy cover, big fish bite it. I mean, you
And
want
it's-
that big line.
That's another thing with this bait is it catches from them all. It'll catch them from a 1/4 pound to some very, very big fish. Like just from the action of this bait.
Quarter pound.
Yeah, I'm telling you.
I literally-
almost as big as the bait.
Kev, I literally, in one of the guy tournaments, they had an award for smallest fish, and I won with a .25 pound bass on the move. Yes, sir, I sure did. They gave me a box full of drop shot weights.
How deep are you fishing your A-rigs?
8 to 10 foot in those feeder creeks.
Okay.
And when you go into those feeder creeks, it's really important with the A-rig bite at least to have at least some type of standing timber moving up into these creeks. And if you can find some little swing in that creek going in there with some timber on it, that's really, really good. Any other
Y'all
questions?
good, buddy?
That's the most you've talked.
Mike,
Yeah, I'm not.
Who you said makes that little crankbait you're talking about?
6 cents.
6 cents. Okay.
Yes, sir. Movement 86 cents.
Movement 80X. Movement 80X. All right, do we have any more online questions at all there, Kev?
No.
All right, we're all wrapped up. Hey, beautiful. Hey, thank you guys for coming out. Thank all of you for watching in the world of the interwebs and all that good stuff. Thank you for showing up. I'm not talking to you, I'm talking to you. Right there, yeah.
James Carlos.
do you ever
Carlos,
do you ever get birds nesting there?
His name's Carlos. I did not, how have I learned you as long as I haven't, didn't know that beard had a
James
name.
Carlos.
His name is Carlos.
How many white people do you see with dark black hair like this? Yours is great.
What is getting
Whoa!
gray? That's a good point.
I'm
sir.
out of here. I don't have. I've gray and none.
Hey, well, hey, we appreciate you guys watching. Appreciate y'all watching. Hey, if we can ever do anything, reach out to us through any social media. I'm sure you guys find us through either Facebook or YouTube or something. So hit us up in any way. We're always happy to help. That's what we're building here as a community. We just love to fish and help each other catch as many as we can. Whether you use our business or not, it's all about the love of the sport and loving our fellow man. So that's what we're about. That's what we do. And thank y'all.
Yes,
Thank
sir.
you. And we'll see you guys next time.
Thank you.
Thank you. Hey, we got one clap from Ben Shobe.